It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org, from Louisville Public Media.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with the interview series presented by WFPK at WFPK.org. Consequence and the Consequence Podcast Network. Thanks so much for making your way here, checking out the series. Please do hit the subscribe button so you can keep up with all the interviews that I put out. 3 new interviews every single week to keep up with all of your favorite artists, discover some new ones, know what's happening in the music world. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Podchaser, YouTube for the video versions, wherever you like to get your podcasts from. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, once again, I'm so excited to be talking to Shirley Manson of Garbage. We're going to be talking about this new record called No Gods, No Masters. It is so good. She takes a direct aim at the events of the past 4 years and well beyond that. And it's one of the band's most powerful statements to date. And Shirley is going to talk about how God and religion appear in these songs, the benefits of being an outsider, and how their songs, their older songs, Queer from the first record and Androgony from Beautiful Garbage, have really come to speak for today. Shirley's also going to dive into the post-punk and new wave influences that the band recall in the music on this record, and we'll hear about the chance of a deluxe edition, as I mentioned, of 2001's Beautiful Garbage, and the possibilities for collaborations on the upcoming tour. Why? Because it's the upcoming tour that also has Alanis Morissette and Phair, a fan's dream, on the way. Only sweetened even more that it's behind such a powerful record. Talking about No Gods, No Masters, it's Kyle Meredith with Shirley Manson of Garbage.
Hi, Kyle.
So No Gods, No Masters is a hell of a masterpiece and a hell of a statement. I'm obsessed with this record right now. So, you know, whatever congratulations means in these moments, congratulations, because it's huge what you guys are doing and what you've pulled off. I will ask, you know, I know it's an album written about the last few years, but it so speaks to the present still and to the future, because I had wondered what protesting would look like and sound like post-Trump, you know, once we get the bad guy out of office. And I really feel like this is what it's going to at least sound like. When did you know that this record was going to be this type of record?
Well, first of all, thank you for your kind words. It you know, in this day and age, it still matters to me to have someone dig, you know, what we're doing and take the time out of their day to share their enthusiasm. It's really much appreciated. Second of all, I guess, you know, I personally knew the thrust of the record just by the first 2 weeks of writing with the band, just by nature of what was coming out my mouth. Was different, you know, for us. And it wasn't a deliberate choice. It was just something that would emerge during the writing, inspired by a lot of the sort of sonics that the band were presenting. You know, they sort of create the stimulus, you know. So, and then, you know, as a singer, you bounce off whatever you're being offered, and that this is what we produced. We are all very proud of it, and somewhat surprised by how prescient it is, you know, being that, like you say, we started writing it about 18 months ago.
And here it is. And it is a time to be fierce, and that comes through in full force on this record. Is there a challenge of taking this kind of content and making it poetic and keeping it poetic?
I mean, I think there is a challenge. You know, I don't think you ever want to come out swinging in a really necessarily overt way when it's a time of great sensitivity. You know, these are very sensitive times. People are absolutely on edge. Everyone's looking for a fight. Everyone wants to be unreasonable. So I think it does require some nuance, you know, but at the same time, like you say, this is a bold record because these are the times I felt called for it, really. And I just couldn't really hold back how I felt, you know, in my own life. It just was an authentic way of expressing what was the most important things to me at the time of making this record.
Now, as far as people coming out looking for a fight, I do know that, or I do hear that God shows up in at least 4 songs on this one. I mean, it sounds like you're calling the old man out like pretty blatantly.
Well, you know, I think God is being used to punish people, and has done obviously for centuries. And I feel like, you know, we're living in these tumultuous times, and I don't really see much practice of true religious attitude or philosophy, acts of kindness. I'm not really seeing too much of that, and I was frustrated by that hypocrisy and that cruelty. And you know, I grew up in a very religious household. I was a very devout child. I took my religious studies really seriously, and the Bible has, as a result, sort of has been ingrained in me since I was a kid. And my father was my Sunday school teacher. He's a very devout man. And so, you know, God just by default has been a feature in my life, you know, since I was very small. And I'm very interested in all religions, but I don't necessarily feel attracted to organized religion per se, you know. But I'm not intending to disrespect anybody's faith or religion. I think if you're a true believer, you will not be offended by anything that's said on this record.
I mean, that seems to, I grew up Catholic for the first 13 years of my life. And, you know, my relationship and all of my friends who've ever had that sort of religious upbringing, the word complicated is just the word. Like, what's your relationship? It's complicated.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And it remains with you throughout your whole life, whether you want it to be there or not. It just is, you know. Yeah. But, you know, I believe in the basic tenets of almost all faiths. You know, they're all speaking common sense. It's just that it's all obfuscated and twisted around by human beings.
Yeah, I tell my son, who's not been brought up religious at all, I tell him, I was like, when he asks about it, I say, you know what the rule is? Just don't be an asshole. That's what it comes down to.
Amen, Kyle. Amen to that, brother.
Just don't be an asshole. There is a part in here that when you get to Wolves, the song Wolves, you know, when I hear it, at least as a listener, it sounds like you're wrestling with someone. And at some points, I wonder if it's yourself. At some points, I wonder if it's with God or with someone else. Can you speak a little bit about that song? I know it's going to be the first official radio single.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly really to do with the battle with self, you know, and how we're all made up of different facets of our personality, and some are good and some are less impressive. And it's the struggle within oneself to try to be kind, you know, try to be good, try to be the best you can be in your life. And not resort to the worst version of yourself, you know. And, you know, I find as a human being, I'm often resorting to the worst version of myself. And it was actually inspired by a story which I had read on Eastern European folklore. And I'm so annoyed with myself because I read the story and I was so taken with the story that I sort of left my station and just made a note of it in my computer and then never came back to it. And so I don't know where it was from or who wrote it, but there's a story, a Eastern European story, fairy tale story about, you know, the wolf and the boy who had the wolves inside, and this wrestling of good and evil, I guess. You know, again, there are, as you so carefully noted, there are a lot of biblical references throughout, sprinkled through the record. And so this is the classic struggle, you know, in yourself to try and elevate your behavior. But isn't it just so easy to be awful?
Well, you get that, I guess, a little bit in Uncomfortably Me as well. I mean, that's, you know, kind of threads that way, as, you know, which I don't know a person who can't relate to that song, you know, as much as whatever we try to project, you know, outward, you know, where.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, that song is the classic outlier song, you know. And I realized just my whole life I felt like an outsider. You know, I'm a Scottish person living in America. I'm the only woman working, you know, with all men. I'm younger than the people I surround myself with most of the time. I'm just the odd one out, you know, and I always will be. And I guess I've got to that point of just accepting that status, the outsider status, you know. and actually coming to realize that actually just being outside of the mainstream can be a great thing. You know, it's certainly been a great thing for Garbage. We don't sound like anyone else out there, and we've never really fitted in with any, you know, scene. You know, we've never been part of the hipster festival lineups. We've never been part of a musical movement. We've just always done our own thing by ourselves, and that in the end has been phenomenal for our career. You know, it's great in the sea of music to have your own identity, you know, and that's really priceless.
It's interesting something you just said though, because you know, said you're the only woman in a old guy band or whatever, but that's important still. But you are there, and I'm tying this back into some of the bigger themes on this record, because you had said something, I believe, online or in another interview, I don't know, but you said, I want power to be dismantled and society reimagined. And for me, you know, as I see it, like that starts with representation. Like you are representing something, even just being, you know, the lead singer in something right there. And I don't know, it's like so many of us want this. So many of us want this general power to be dismantled and the society to be reimagined. And some days most days maybe I feel pessimistic, but I'm starting to feel more and more optimistic that at least we're going in that direction. Do you feel that?
I do feel that. I mean, I believe in evolution. I really do. I lay my hopes at the feet of evolution and the realization that the younger generations behind us are way switched on in ways that we could never have imagined growing up, you know. And I think they're, thanks to the power of social media, they're aware of things, you know, at a young age that we weren't. Now, there's a sad side to that, a melancholic side to that, but I think in general it's going to be good for the human race. I don't think young people are going to put up with quite the same amount of rubbish, of nonsense that we have, you know. I think they are very, very concerned about the environment. I grew up in the 70s. We didn't have any concerns about the environment. We didn't know there was a problem. So, you know, things like that, I do think that there'll be a pushback against this old order that really seems that it's run out of ideas. You know, we are living in a very different world as a result of the internet. You know, we really, you know, need some new ideas about how we all move forward as a society, and we need representation of all the marginalized peoples, because they all have different experiences, and therefore they're all going to have different ideas. And I think that's an incredible thing, and we are so stupid not to take the best ideas for our governments and move our society forward, you know. But I understand there's a resistance to it because people are scared, right? People are conservative. They're worried about their children. They're worried about their retirement. I get where the conservatism comes from, and I appreciate and try to be sympathetic to, you know, the fear that I obviously imbues in people, but we have to be courageous because we can't continue in this vein, you know.
I was talking to my wife last night, and we brought up that book, The People's History of the United States.
Oi.
Yeah, and just the concept that it laid out, like, okay, here's everything you ever learned, but from the point of view of the minority in that situation. And you know, it's, of course, that's, you know, a lot of times that's a book we'll pick up in our 20s or something like that. But I said, yeah, I feel like for the first time we're starting to see that history, you know, the minority as being the bigger voice in it, at least the loudest, you know, the one getting some of the attention or whatever. And like,
yeah, well, again, I mean, I think social media has helped galvanize marginalized people, you know, and they are beginning to accrue power and a voice in society by default, which is a beautiful thing. Outside of government, they are able to galvanize a position and reach other people and start to teach people and start to explain why we're in this dreadful situation. You know, why Black, Brown, Indigenous peoples are still suffering so much at the hands of this old patriarchal system, you know, and why we must seek to address it immediately.
So I'll ask an obvious question. Did writing this album help you make sense of any of this? Maybe more so?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helped me sort of calm myself down. You know, that's the beauty of getting to be a writer for a living. It's a moment where you can express something, whether it's your fears, whether it's your hopes, whether it's your fury. and to even register that for the public record feels like something substantial and relieving. So I'm very grateful that I got to put down some of my thoughts on this record, and I'm grateful to the band that they met me on this sort of like quite intense plane. You know, I didn't ever get any pushback from anyone in the band, and that surprised me a little, you know, because I thought maybe they'd be a little more uncomfortable with it, but I've had nothing but support, so that's a glorious thing.
Well, it's a beautiful marriage of what you're singing about, how you're singing, and the music that it is met with. When I talked with Butch last year, of course, we were talking about the Diamonds album, but I was asking about Garbage, and I think he used the two terms dark and schizophrenic, and I didn't know what that meant at the time. When I heard The Men Who Rule the World, my first thought was, holy shit, Garbage is a post-punk band now. You like, and you do several different sounds all over the record as usual, but there is a sense I hear more than I've ever heard with you all before. That's the term that I'm gonna go on the hill with here, was post-punk. Like, this seems like you all are going down that path further than you've ever gone before. Did you all talk about it in those terms while you were doing it? And was it different writing to this type of music?
Well, I mean, I wrote most of my parts to the writing demos, which were much less fleshed out. But the days that we started writing, Butch had made a delivery of a brand new drum machine called Machine by Native Instruments, and he didn't really know how to use it. And as a result, the rhythm tracks are very, very, and I use this word deliberately and carefully and with respect, the rhythm tracks were really naive because he was just figuring out how to use this particular piece of equipment. And as a result, you know, that I think also sort of defined the sound of this record, in that as a result, everybody else was very careful about the placement of their instruments. And it harkened back to these records that we all fell in love with, you know, post-punk, new wave. We referenced a lot of like Gary Newman and Roxy Music and Susie and the Banshees and The Cure, all these sort of bands that we grew up listening to and being influenced by.
Yeah, so interesting. I just finished a Gary Newman interview.
Oh, he's wonderful. What a wonderful human being he is.
Yeah. And
a genius and a wonderful human being.
And of course, we're talking about sort of similar things, you know, with what he's putting out right now, and a little bit, he's coming from more of the Earth's point of view, you know, as to what all's happening. But musically speaking, I can completely hear that. And there's a great tradition of artists putting out some of their best work because they didn't know how to use the instruments that they were given. You know?
I love that. I mean, to me, I think any great art. Well, not any great art, should I say? There are lots of moments of creating great art when you are able to get into a child's mindset. Because as you get older, you know, we've been in a band now for 25 years together. We've been in a band now for 25 years, and you know, you get stuck in your ways and you get stuck in habits and techniques that you've used successfully in the past, and it can get really dangerous and really boring. And I think on this record, we were able somehow to get back to I talk about this a lot, a beginner's mindset, which I think is of vital importance as you get older, as you are become background music. You know, when you're young and you're the new thing, it's easy to garner attention. As you get older and people are used to you being around, people just switch you out. You know, they just turn you down. And it becomes harder and harder to capture people's attention. But I think if you keep things fresh for yourselves, then you can assume that will be fresh for others, you know. So I think as you age, I think you have to adapt. You have to try things you haven't done before. You have to be brave. You have to change. So I think we've managed that with this record, you know.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's a nice coincidence as I was looking back at some of your history, because it's the 20th anniversary of Beautiful Garbage later this year.
Yeah.
And, which was another time that was I think maybe that was the first time it really found you all experimenting with lots of new sounds on one record. And even looking back, by the way, you know, Androgony being on that album and what it meant then and how more normalized that subject matter has become now. As we talk about the progress that we hope for, I think you can actually see it in that track right there, over the past 10 years.
I agree that a lot has changed, and changed for the better since we emerged in 1995 with Queer, and I really am so glad, it gladdens me to see the slow shifts and progress that's slowly getting made. And I just hope that we can continue and on this path towards acceptance of other human beings who live differently from us, and who deserve respect and deserve protection from the government, and so on and so forth.
I know that the important subject at hand is the new record, but I wanted to quickly ask about that, just because anniversaries are what they are. Do you all plan on doing like the deluxe of Beautiful Garbage like you've done with the previous 2 records?
We might be flirting with that idea.
Flirting? I'll take that. I'll take that. Because what it is, I'm just a greedy fan when it comes to garbage. I want, and I want, and I want. That's what it comes down to. And I know you're giving plenty in return. Again, No Gods, No Masters, and the tour coming up. I was also just talking with Liz Phair on Tuesday.
Hey.
We just did an interview, and of course, she has obviously nothing but great things to say about you all, and I've enjoyed hearing you all's talking on your podcast, which, by the way, I didn't even bring that up, is so good. The podcast.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the nominations that I
Thank
think I just
you.
saw.
Yeah, I'm pretty blown away by the whole experience. It's been nothing but inspirational to sit down and talk with these great artists. And I'm so in awe. I've learned something new from every single one of them, and it's just been the shot of inspiration I really was yearning for. And, to sit down with somebody like George Clinton, or Esperanza Spalding, or Liz Phair, like you said, is really, really wonderful. And I come out of each interview kind of like on fire. Like I feel my veins are sort of burning with excitement. So yeah, what a great thing to happen to me in this part of my life.
I know that feeling quite well. And again, as a fan, like these are the conversations that, growing up, I think we always wanted to hear. Like these are the conversations between our favorite artists, so thank you for doing that.
Oh, you're very welcome, Kyle.
And I'll also be catching some of the shows. I'm so looking forward, as we all are, to live music, but especially this tour, Garbage, Alanis Morissette, and Liz Phair. I think I'm in a couple of the shows because you're coming close to where I am here in Louisville. So
awesome.
Wait.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really grateful to Alanis for her reaching out and inviting us to join this tour, and having Liz Phair on there too. What a bill. Yeah, right. I mean, even I'm like, okay, that's a bill. That's a fucking
please tell me that there's chance for collaboration, in some of these nights.
I don't know what will happen. It's it's so complicated with trying to make sure everybody's safe, making sure that we make sensible decisions with our travel plans and everything. It's not going to be like a normal tour. That much I do know. I think we're going to have to make certain concessions and decisions that are tough. But I just would rather be out there, doing it. And so I'm willing to make any concessions that I need to. But, I admire Alanis. I think she's conducted herself with great dignity. And I was watching the Billie Eilish documentary the other day, and I was like, whoa, this is like Billie Eilish is the Alanis Morissette of her era, and it never really struck me that Alanis would have that kind of pressure on her, because she handled it so beautifully at the time, and with great humility. So I have a lot of respect for her.
No, absolutely. And I could say the same about you. I mean, the amount of artists that you've influenced, I still hear, parts of that garbage sound in a lot of new folks, and even in Billie Eilish too, when she comes through with that electronic trip hoppy sound, I think there is lineage, to what you all have put out in the world.
There's lineage to everyone and everything. That's the most spectacular thing about being an artist, is we're all interconnected, whether we like it or not, whether we're proud of the association or not proud of the association. In this case, of course, we are enormously proud of anyone that we may have influenced, indirectly or directly. And I don't know, I just feel grateful to be a musician working in this climate. It's a really tough time for musicians, and to still be here, 25 years later with the band, it just seems like a miracle to me.
Yeah, I am personally so happy and grateful that you all have kept doing it. No pun intended when I say this, the version 2.0 of Garbage, the one that took over about a decade ago after a few years, away, it's been just as exciting as the first time around. I mean, the music you all do is so great, and it's so amazing. And for me and my life, it's so important too. And this latest record with No Gods, No Masters is just another high watermark on your career. So thank you
I
so
think
much.
you and I should speak every morning, and I can get these positive affirmations in my life, and I would just be on cloud nine constantly.
You're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. So Shirley, thank you so much. This has been such a
Kyle.
pleasure.
Thanks just for being interested. It's much appreciated.
Anytime and every time. I can't wait to see the show.
I'll see you out there, my friend.
See you around. All right.
Sounds good. Cheers, mate.
All right, take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.
So the last time Shirley and I talked, I think was back in 2018, and this is when we were discussing the 20th anniversary of their sophomore record, of Garbage's sophomore record, version 2.0. I'm going to include that interview here as she and I talk about the moment they became one of the biggest bands in the world, how the industry has changed and the struggles artists have today, as well as the sexism and inequality, and this is where we started talking about what would eventually become No Gods, No Masters, Part 2 of Kyle Meredith with Shirley Manson.
Well, with all the anniversaries and the new albums, we can really probably pull this off every year for a little while now.
That's true. We'll have a new record next year, so there you go.
There we go.
Let's put it in the diary now.
Well, I want to start, though, with version 2.0, because I got so excited when I saw that this was the 20th anniversary year and there was going to be a big celebration. This is the record that you've called, that you think is the quintessential Garbage record, right?
Yes, I do, actually. Yeah.
I sort of thought that, too, because, I mean, that first record, and I think I'm just really echoing things I read from you in the book anyway, but that first record was you guys finding your feet. This was the first record where you were a real band and everybody was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah. No, definitely. We had sort of, history sort of speaks for itself. We sort of fell together, as a band. And then we toured the first record for almost 2 years. And at the end of that tour, we were bolstered by the success, excited by the success and the possibility of making another record. And we sort of went into the studio with a lot of swagger. And I think you can hear that on the record.
It's one of my favorite things about this period for you all is that you were sort of an accidental band who never really knew if you were going to take yourself seriously as a band. And suddenly you're one of the biggest bands in the world.
Kyle, we're accidental people. What can I tell you? It's, it was so peculiar and so unexpected. None of us ever really sought the kind of fame that ended up coming our way. It wasn't something that we were ambitiously, striving for at all. And so, to find ourselves, on mainstream television and on the front covers of magazines was really surreal.
I can't imagine what that's like. I mean,
it's ghastly.
Yeah,
it's quite ghastly.
I think there was one story of you saying you were walking through the airport and it was just your face everywhere.
And I was mortified. I mean, I was genuinely mortified. I just this is the most uncomfortable thing that's ever happened to me. And I felt sort of sweaty, and sort of mildly panicked. And I can't say we were very comfortable in that kind of limelight, as it turns out. I think we all felt a little self-conscious, and I hate to use this word but I think it's probably appropriate for how we felt. We felt it was a bit vulgar. That it was an obscene amount of attention, and it felt vulgar.
What was nice and endearing about reading about that time was still how much of, I don't know, is fangirl the right word? Because you're meeting all these amazing artists and you have no, but even today, you're like, oh my God, I was hanging out with Nick Cave, and oh my God, David Bowie came into our life. And I saw this as like, yeah, but because you were on their level, everybody was that level. And I don't know.
I was never on the same level as David Bowie or Nick Cave. I can assure you, Kyle. But yeah, you're right. We were mingling with our heroes, and that was extraordinary. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there was lots of gorgeous things that came with that kind of success. We had access to anything and anybody, and that can be very thrilling, So yeah, I don't want to sound too jaded because there was so much of it was so great fun, and the most important thing was just that we were playing sold out shows all over the world. That was extraordinary, you know, and I wouldn't swap that out for the world. But all the rest of the stuff that sort of came along with the success, the musical success, was, you know, uninvited and certainly not well tolerated by any of us.
Of course, I can say, though, that the most interesting part, and we should really concentrate on this too, was the music itself, because what a great record, and still how it stands up. My wife was asking last night, because I've been listening to the record a lot in the last week and a half to kind of prepare and everything, and she said, you know, does it sound different now than it does? And I said, you know, it's interesting because so many records from that period, those were really coming of age years for me. You know, they have changed in various ways. Some of them are dated, some of them just change meanings, and this is one of the ones I feel like I can still connect to in the exact same way.
Well, that is a fine compliment. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it was a very forward-thinking record at the time. You know, it's hard to imagine now that we're 20 years down the line, but when we made that record, nobody had made digital recordings yet, really. And we were certainly one of the first bands to utilize a lot of the new, fresh technology that the computer technology brought into the musician's universe, you know. And as a result, I think that you can hear that on the record. It's sort of very different sounding to a lot of the records that came out around that time, and really, really stood out, and I think captured people's imaginations sonically.
Because it was possibly one of the first records to be recorded completely in Pro Tools, yet there's still so much soul in those songs, and that could have easily been lost. I think that's one of the most surprising things about this record.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that, what you refer to, is actually just incompetence. So we're using a lot of the technology, but we were a testing vessel almost, you know, and we had a lot of direct contact with the tech companies at that time, and we were just beta testing, you know, pieces of equipment, and so there's a lot of mistakes still on that record that nowadays would be cleaned up, you know, and therefore the record would sound much cleaner and more sterile, but there's still this sort of analog approach and still a lot of, like, as I said, sort of errors that give that there's a certain kind of life that version 2.0 has.
And as far as the lyrics, though, I mean, this was the first one that I don't know how you say it, became full on fronting the band. Like, this was all you on the microphone.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I certainly took a much more aggressive, a more dominant position, I think is probably fair to say, because after my experience with the first record, I realized that I was going to be held accountable for absolutely every word that was on our record. And I was determined to be able to stand behind anything that came out of my mouth. And therefore, generally speaking, you know, I wanted it to be my own words. And I'm very lucky that I work with 3 individuals who have been willing to compromise and willing to, you know, put their own lyrical bent aside in order to make me feel that I am being authentic and true to myself. You know, it's very generous of them because they're all capable of writing great songs themselves. But I think one of the reasons our band has been successful is that we are an authentic group. You know, we're sort of like an old school band. We function that way, and it's allowed us to flourish in ways and thrive in ways that other bands, you know, have been destroyed by the pressures that come with success and come with a continuing career as a band, you know, because you're all bound together. It's very frustrating a lot of the time for the individual, because the individual has to serve the group dynamic, and that can be very challenging sometimes.
So when you're listening back then, and I assume you've had to a bit more than usual to a record like this, are there still songs that resonate the way they did then now?
Yeah. I mean, I'm very proud of this record. I love it. You know, I've got nothing but great feelings towards the songs, and I can still relate to a lot of the stuff that we wrote about, you know, and covered in that record. And, you know, right off the top of my head, you know, Paranoid and Pusher are 2 of my favourite songs that we've ever written. I still relate very much to Hammering, and The Trick Is to Keep Breathing, I think, is a classic. You know, I think we've got a little classic in that song. So yeah, I can stand by my record proudly.
I hope so. Here's where, of course, everything it changes a bit on that part of things, because when you look back on this time, and not just the 20 years and the music, but it's of course also the way the industry has changed, and it's so bizarre because, again, reading the book, we know now all the shit that you had to deal with back then, but reading about that and seeing the way the industry's changed now, I mean, do you see that it's finally becoming a bit more positive?
Oh, God, no. The music industry is a hellhole. Make no mistake. To be honest, it's an industry that has built itself around creatives, and its whole purpose is to exploit the artist. That's just how they make money, and they're really good at it. And that will never change. If a record company's any good, they'll be exploiting you at every turn. That's their job, and that dynamic will never change. Not really. Otherwise, people aren't going to want to build businesses around creatives. If they don't get full, crack at the whip, so to speak, they're not going to be interested. So there you have it.
I was hoping, in one sense that there's a bit more power in the artist's own hands these days to get their music out in ways that, would have been impossible, in the 90s and for half of the 2000s at least, without the support of a label, major or mini major or something like that.
Well, you see, it's a double-edged sword because, when the internet first sort of sprouted its wings, and we were all very excited as artists that we could, upload our music for free and be without a label and be without a distribution company, et cetera, et cetera. For a brief moment, it was fantastic, and it did empower the musician. But now, with streaming services and this, that, and the next thing, basically what's happening is these big conglomerates, these corporate monsters, have cut deals with all these streaming services and so on, and they still make up vast amount of money, but it's not distributed to the artist. And now that any old artist can upload material onto the internet, all the great stuff can easily get drowned out in literally a nanosecond. So in order to stick out, you really do need a support network. And so you get an offer that you can't refuse, basically. It's like either, there's the tiny, minuscule possibility that you'll have a breakthrough record, but that's a tiny percentage. Or you join forces with a record label and just allow yourself to be grossly exploited on the off chance that they can break your record, And for a brief moment, if your record is broken, it seems worthwhile to have been exploited like that. But then, of course, if you manage to carve out a career for yourself for any length of time, that's when the problems really begin, because all of a sudden it doesn't feel so great to be so grossly exploited,
You make it sound also glamorous, being a rock star.
Oh yeah, yes, the glamour in the music industry is extreme. I mean, obviously you've got the upper class. You've always got the upper class who do extraordinarily well and do live a glamorous life and do make insane amounts of money. And there will always be artists like that, the Biebers and the Beyoncés and the amazing Rihannas. They're extraordinary creatures, and they've got vast amounts of talent. I'm not knocking them at all, but that's what I call the upper class. There is no middle class at all in the music industry. It's either all or nothing. And you've got this incredibly large working class of musicians who don't really, make very much money and are holding down other jobs. All the young musicians that I meet now, they're holding down 2 or 3 jobs as well as touring, as well as making records. It's tough, man. It's really tough out there.
While we're on such epic subjects, I'll put on another one here.
You can always rely on me to drag everybody's spirits down.
No, and you know what? I'm going to use what you said there here in just a minute. I'll build into it, because backing up again, and in similar theme, it is also ludicrous to look back on that and think, oh, it was a thing that you all were a band that was 3 guys and a girl, and everybody made a point of pointing that out. And you had to deal with being, a woman fronting a guy. Well, just a woman in rock, I guess, is the real way to say that. And I know there's an easy line, especially, by the way, as music was getting more dude rock at the time, that had to be just stupid for you to have to deal with on a daily basis.
It could, yeah, I mean, that's fair, I guess. There were some very, very stupid moments that I had to sort of try and push through. But again, I felt gratitude and privilege that I had even got to this point. And I think that's what kept me marching forward. I was just like, I realized how rare it was to be a woman in this environment. And I was grateful, So you just sort of muscle through and just try not to let it get to you too much.
Well, I'll ask a similar question. The several movements that are happening that are finally putting a lot of this conversation into the forefront and the context. Do you see that these changes are finally happening for the better?
I'm very grateful to the Me Too movement. I feel like it has started a conversation that really desperately needs to be had. I guess what leaves me a little despondent is that I feel like our culture has just sort of looked at the Me Too movement as a quote-unquote female issue. And my perspective on this is actually it's a male issue that we are discussing here. And why so few men have entered into the discussion in any positive, empathetic, supportive way surprises me, because I feel like we are talking about y'all's midden. This is a mess that you have all made, and we need to clean this up. You need to get your fellow brothers to toe the line, because the statistics are extraordinarily shocking. And I know all the good men that I know and love are kind of horrified and genuinely shocked that it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men who experience some form of, male aggression, whether that's sexual or otherwise, and that's an extraordinary statistic that really demands our attention and really calls for some close examination that this has to stop. This is not right.
Obviously, being a guy that's asking this question and everything, and I know how that can be because it's always awkward on my end, no matter how much I think I'm the good guy in the equation, because I know I've been guilty of it at parts, even if I can't remember. And it's embarrassing because, as you say, it is us. No matter what I try to say, it's still us.
Yeah, and it's all of us, too. It's our whole society and what we choose to tolerate and what we don't speak up about. And, I just think that's what's so great about the Me Too movement. It is giving us all an opportunity to really talk about these kind of very difficult, challenging, scary, awkward, topics,
Well, I always love that you're, as the phrase goes, putting your money where your mouth is, because you've been, one of the many things I'll say with Music Festival Equality. That's a big thing you're championing right now, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I just champion women, to be honest. And because I'm a musician, then, my immediate attention sort of falls into my own sphere. But I want just things to be better. I want women to have a more equal representation, across the board. And that, in particular, we have to focus on women of colour and black women, and, the opportunities that they are currently, enjoying are so few and far between, and it's so wrong.
Well, I see the changes out there, and I'll go back to that one specifically. I know there's been one festival, losing the name of it, but, that's already pledged that it's going to be, as 50-50 as they can get it, and that's great to see that people are reacting right away, so the steps are being moved forward.
And I appreciate that, because I think each gesture has power in it and puts pressure on other festivals to do the same. And I understand that, a lot of people are like, well, this is ridiculous, and they sort of blow off about positive discrimination and they're very offended by it. But I do believe as I've gotten older that unless we incorporate positive discrimination, then we'll never change anything. People need a leg up, and we have to start somewhere. And otherwise, the female representation will remain as it is. So yes, I think it's great to really make these pledges. And I know for a fact there's plenty of talent out there. And when people tell me that the public, we're just simply giving the public what they want, I totally disagree with that. The public will take what they're given, for the most part, from the curators of art, because they don't know what else they could be getting. They just are offered up acts on a festival bill, and I don't think for 1 second they're thinking, well, what's behind the curtain? What didn't you give me today? Instead, they're like, this is awesome. We're having a time of our lives, these great bands, and everyone's drinking and partying and having a great time. So I just don't believe that the public don't want to hear female musicians. I'm sorry. I find that just a ludicrous argument.
Well, it doesn't take that far to even prove that wrong, too, because, you got the guy on the Grammys, the guy who runs the Grammys, saying that
Neil Portnoy.
Yeah, that horrible line that he said. And then, just look at any top 10 list. Close your eyes and pick any, magazine or website or whatever and top 10 list. And what you're going to find is it's predominantly women artists creating the most interesting stuff. And that's, like I said, just look at any of them. And for him to say something like that, it's like, dude, what music world are you living in?
Well, Neil Portnoy made a very ill-advised comment for sure, and really, revealed himself for the old, out-of-touch misogynist that he is. I'm very surprised he remains in that position, actually, because he's already shown all his cards. We know how he thinks. He's not a female identifying artist ally, just full stop, But in some ways, I was relieved when he made that kind of silly comment, because it's sort of proof that that's what women are up against. People can poo-poo us all they want, but the fact is these attitudes are prevalent in the music industry, and they remain that way and have been like that, since rock and roll began. So, we just have to keep pushing, and hopefully things will change. And I do believe ultimately they will change. I believe in evolution, Kyle.
It looks like it's happening. That's the nice thing. And having you as a role model, a mentor that I see is happening more and more out there as new artists, are created every day. And the work you do with the girls' school out in LA, the festival out there, I mean, that's the positive stuff. That's the stuff that's making a big change. And I think you're one of the best voices to have, on the megaphone out there. So all the compliments and praise.
Well, thank you. That's very generous and kind and sweet. But I can think of much better allies and role models for them. But I'm all they've got right now. So they're just going to have to make do with me.
Well, let me turn it just a little bit lighter, and I'm going to get back to the music too. But as you're looking at those at the new class, as these artists coming up, do you see yourself in any of those, or any names specifically that you sort of go, oh yeah, no, I get you, I get what you're doing there.
This sounds like a weird thing to say, but I feel a kinship with any artist who emerges. I can identify with their sort of driving spirit, and their ambition and their longing. And so some artists are not necessarily making the kind of music that I personally would be excited by, but I still get excited by them, as figures, as people, as women, as little fighters, and I don't know, I want the very best for them all. I know how tough it is out there. It is a tough career in music. It really is. You don't have any job security. You don't get a pay packet at the end of every week. You don't get insurance. It's difficult, and it remains difficult. I've had a really long career at this point. I've been making music for 35 years, and it's still uncertain. My future is always in flux, and that can be stressful on people. And I see a lot of fragility amongst young artists, particularly right now for some reason. And I just want to protect them, or at least put protections in place so that they have a better chance of weathering the storm that will inevitably hit them at some point during their career. Interesting
that you're the second artist I've talked to in the past 24 hours that used the word fragility when talking about sort of similar themes. So, yeah, right there it is. Yeah, they're funny times. I think young artists now are so much more self-conscious than we were. We didn't have any social media, so we had no interference in our lives or our heads. Nobody could mess with our brains. But I think with social media, there's so much mind effing that goes on that I think it remains very challenging for a young artist to hold together. I'm always saying that, hold the line. I'm always saying that to all my young people that I meet who are artists. It's like you got to hold the line, and that is really hard when you get pushed up against every day in every way. Yeah. Well, again, having you be the person that tells them that is a big up to begin with.
I don't know about that. I think that's the problem, is when you become old, which of course I am at this point, young people just look at you like you're some kind of freakazoid that came from outer space. They can't necessarily relate to you. And that's the problem, because I feel like in our culture, older people do have something of value, that if young people are really willing to listen, we can get some jewels of advice, or just methods of protection. But yeah, I mean, that's the age-old dynamic between the young and the old. We're always sparring with one another and dismissing each other, and I just feel like I would continue to want to learn from young people. I think they've got a lot to teach me, but I too believe that young people have got a lot to learn. Full stop, you know.
They listen to the music. They connect with your music, however long ago that is, as we're celebrating that 20th anniversary of version 2.0. To me, the elder versus kid argument, you're right, has been there forever. And it's, listen to my wisdom, and they're like, just go away and let us be us. But I find maybe as an outside of not being an artist, being on the part that I'm on and everything, that that part doesn't exist so much, because for us, we're listening to the music, we're connecting. So I think I always look up to the artists to kind of guide, because it was their art that I connected to. It was your art or Bowie's art or whoever's art that made me the person I am, so that's wide open ears right there.
Well, I guess that's just the power of music rather than the power of the musician. I think music has got an ability to touch people regardless of their age. It's something mysterious and mystic and strange that I don't think any of us have been able to figure out how it works, why it works, and how powerful it is. But yeah, music's got an extraordinary ability to cross all genders, all creeds, all religions, all colours, all everything. And that's what makes it so magnificent in a way.
So you're taking this record out on the road. I will selfishly ask, I only see UK dates right now. Do you know if there's going to be any plans to bring 2.0 to the States?
There are some plans afoot, but if and when we do it, it will be a very, very limited run, because we toured last year and the year before, and this year is supposed to be us writing our new records. So we're loath to take out too much time, but we understand that there's been a somewhat of a frenzied demand from the fans, so we're going to try and put in a few dates. But yeah, it won't be an extensive tour, which is unlike us, because we normally tour for a year. But this will just be a matter of weeks.
Yeah, well, I know that the last anniversary tour is sort of what got in the way of Strange Little Birds getting wrapped up. So if it means that you guys are going to, if it means more studio time to get the next record out, that's fine. That's
yeah. Because the anniversary was always meant to just be something fun and just give these records that meant so much to us a little cursory, love. But yeah, it must not become our main preoccupation. It's always looking to the future, I think, is good.
I'd love to ask about the new record. You guys are recording out in California, right? Mm-hmm. In the desert?
Well, we haven't actually accomplished that yet. That was the big plan. But for a lot of different reasons, we ended up going back to our studio in Atwater, which is where we always work. But in next month, we are planning to go back out to Palm Springs, and we're going to live together. And we haven't done this since the first record. We're all going to live under the one roof, and we're going to record during the day, then we're going to go out to dinner, and then we come back and we're going to have band movie sessions, which is what we used to do back in the day. So this is the great plan. Whether we'll actually pull it off or whether we'll all end up arguing and getting into our cars and heading back home, I'm not entirely sure, but that is the plan. And we're all pretty excited about it, actually.
Yeah, because back then you didn't have a home to run off to. If it didn't work out, you were still stuck with each other, and now there's that little out if you need to take it.
That's right. Well, that's very true. But we're going to just see how we get along, and using a different space and a different environment, and we've got some plans, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
I love the idea of that and sound of that. I also am curious, when the album eventually down the road finally gets recorded and finished, I know the desert can add, some interesting moods and sounds to a song. I mean, even, in Palm Springs, I'd kind of be curious if that sort of snakes its way in there.
I do hope so.
Yeah.
I do hope so. I love that desert magic, but you never can tell. That's the thing. You make all these big plans, and then, you get in a room with each other and you start playing, and it just, you can't control it. Just whatever happens, and it's often so far removed from your plans. It's funny. It's just how it goes.
Well, either way, Shirley, I cannot wait to hear how it happens.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate your support.
This has been so much fun. I always have so much fun talking to you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for your patience.
No patience at all. It's all my honor, and we'll do this again next year when there's a new record.
All right. Yeah, it's in my diary.
All right, great.
You're on my dance card, Kyle.
Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
So that's a 2018 interview with Shirley Manson as we talked about the 20th anniversary of version 2.0. During that same time, I also got to speak with Duke Erickson of the band Garbage to talk more in depth about that same record, playing the album live and full on that tour, the songs they hadn't played in a very long time. And again, at that point, his thoughts on what would become this new record at No Gods, No Masters, part 3 of Kyle Meredith with Garbage.
It's a pleasure to talk to you.
You too. The celebration 20 years of one of the greatest albums of the 90s with version 2.0. This, as we look back on it, and I got to read the book too, which was so much fun to kind of experience it through your all's, stories in that way. But when you look back on it, like this, at least perception on my part, seems like this is life at the top of the world at this point. Did it feel like that for you, though?
Well, I think it did, as much as we had time to notice what was going on around us. We toured for 22 months or something, 20 months around version 2.0. So we were so busy with that and exhausted, and we were having a great time. Of course, we were seeing the world basically, but for us to really be aware of what the album was doing and how well it was selling and how it was getting played on the radio and all of that stuff was just these, occasional reports from the home base, so to speak. So we had some heady moments, of course, playing certain venues and meeting a lot of people and being nominated for awards and all that stuff. But for the most part, we were just out on tour, sort of oblivious in a way of how big this record had become.
But as your all statement, I mean, this was the point where you said, now we're a real band. Like this is the real thing this time, because as the story goes with Garbage, with that first album setup, it was sort of like testing the waters, and it feels like everything sort of happened accidentally.
That's exactly right. I mean, I think we had, Cheryl was new to the fold, of course, on that first record, and she was still new coming into the second record, really. But having had some success and been on tour with that first record, and then coming in the second record, we had become more of a band and had sort of figured out a musical direction, I guess. And Shirley had become much more involved with the songwriting, the lyrics, and the production than she was on the first record. Not to say she wasn't involved on the first record, she was very much so, but not to the extent that she took over the reins for nearly all of the lyric writing on the second record and a lot of the song ideas and production ideas. And it was just, we became much more of a foursome rather than a threesome plus one.
Speaking of that right there, during that time, was that difficult at all for you to kind of let go of? Because suddenly the attention was on Shirley too, as the front person. That's where the attention went. So not only are you sort of giving up part of the songwriting, and I don't know, how important lyrics were to you at that time, but then, as the camera goes, you've definitely become one of the guys in the back, as sort of the joke went throughout that book.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think any of us were unhappy with the attention Shirley was getting. She deserved it, for one thing, and still does. It didn't take away from how we worked in the studio. That was the main thing. Mm-hmm. It didn't take away from how we shared the work on the music itself. Had it affected that, I think we would have all had a problem, But it never got in the way of that. That's all just how, public perception and all that the PR side of things. Mm-hmm. But we still worked very much as a band together in the studio, writing the songs and sharing all of the, everything that comes with being in the band. As much as we could deal with the business side of stuff and all that, we all shared equally in that. So I don't think any of the three of the boys in the band were bothered by that at all.
Well, the way it comes out of the music is, of course, so impressive, too, because you have this great meeting of electronic meets rock. You were pushing against what was possible with Pro Tools, which is really amazing given how new all of that was. But I guess what the impressive part is, and I know a lot of that came from you, is you wanted to make sure this record still had soul. What was the challenge there?
Well, anytime you start incorporating a computer into anything, soul can quickly become secondary. It can get too easy sometimes. Pro Tools is a mixed blessing. It's a blessing and a curse. It opens you up to a whole new universe of possibilities, and that's exciting and wonderful. But it's also a dangerous. You can lose your, as you put it, your soul in it. You can lose the human feel, and you can just second guess yourself way too much. And we did a lot of that on that record. I mean, you could try 40 different things just on the guitar part, and we did a lot of that. I think we wasted a lot of time just, exploring the possibilities, these new possibilities that Pro Tools offered up. I think and I think we still wrestle with that sometimes, but I think we got it. We've kind of tamed the beast a little bit at this point.
Yeah. Were you doing much sampling on that second record? Because I know there was some pretty famous ones on the first record.
Yeah, we were still doing that. Yeah. There's a lot of that going on, but we were also using Pro Tools in place of that sometimes. So it was a back and forth. Yeah, we were finding loops and using a lot of found stuff that we would pick off of an old record or something.
I think that's what got me is I couldn't tell as much on the second one. Like, it really did blend well. And you talk about those beats. I mean, some of those beats are maddening. It's like I couldn't even to figure out how to find the space as you're just layering on all of these things. That seems crazy to me.
It's a very layered record, that's for sure. There's a lot going on version 2.0. We discover that every time we go on tour and we listen to we always listen to the recorded versions before we start a new tour to remind us of what people hear from those songs, so that we can maybe either give them what they expect or surprise them. So we always go back, and there's a lot going on on that record. God, Push It had a lot going on in that song, but that was that was a part of the exploration. That was part of the this whole new world of possibilities.
Now, with playing the album live, that you're going to do, and a handful of shows over in the UK, and hopefully with a few shows over in the US, are there songs that you hadn't played in a long time that you've had to relearn?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of songs on there we haven't played in a while. I think we've played all of them at one point or another live, but Wicked Ways, I don't think we've played in a long time. I don't think we played Medication and so forth. But we've given different treatment to those songs live, so we'll see what we come up with for this tour. I think we're going to have fun with it, and we're looking forward to it, actually. You would think after all this time that we always get asked, as every band does of our ilk, of our age, you must get tired of playing these songs, but we don't really. We don't. And diving into these tracks that we haven't played in a long time will be enjoyable for us. And then along with that are all the B-sides that accompanied that record. And there's some really good tracks there, too. Some songs that maybe would have deserved to be on the record had we had them ready in time. There's a few B-sides on Soldier Through This, which is a great song that and part of what makes those songs the B-sides, they were fun because we had to do them really quickly. Mm-hmm. And we couldn't do a lot of second guessing and a lot of messing around. Soldier Through This was the song that we recorded when we were kind of on tour, I think. and we happened to be in LA, and we got stuck in this little studio at A&M. I mean, it's a tiny place, and we recorded two tracks there, and they're both pretty good. You know, we did them in basically a day or two.
It just shows up, I mean, to have such strong songs that didn't make it. I mean, the album itself, it had 6 singles to it, which these days is
that's crazy.
Completely unheard of. You know, 6 singles for one album.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs when albums are kind of being overlooked as a format, as a presenting your work as a body of work rather than a single with a few tracks on it. It's kind of like the way it went back in the 50s, I guess, wasn't it? In the 60s, where you'd have a hit and then they'd put out a record with 11 tracks that were not very good. But once the album became it became expected of a band like us to put out an album of work. You know, it's like an artist doesn't put one painting on display. You put out a gallery full of paintings so that people can see a direction rather than just one example of it. It's not necessarily even economically a good idea to make albums these days. It costs money to do the work in the studio and blah blah blah. But we'll always do it because that's who we are. That's what we love to do.
Well, thank God. As a fan, I will say that. Yeah, I'll expand on that question. That, you know, the bigger question that probably gets thrown at you quite a bit too is, do you see over this 20 years since 2.0 or 30 years, 40 years, however you want to look at that the industry where it is now has changed for the better or worse?
Well, I would say that it's changed for the worse. As far as the industry goes, I think there's some really exciting music out there, but I think the fact that an artist's work can just be heard for free without any compensation is robbery, really. I think it's gone to the point where record labels, what have you, don't invest in their artist's career as much. If an artist doesn't succeed on the first single, it's pretty much over. That kind of development that used to happen is no longer respected. And I don't know. I guess I could go on and on. I mean, you know, it used to be an artist could make a great record and get reimbursed at least for the work. You know, it's intellectual property, whatever. It's your art, and it's just kind of taken from you rather than paid for. And I think artists are constantly trying to figure out how to, you know, make the purchase of the vinyl or the CD a more attractive commodity. But, you know, if you don't have to pay for it, you just want to hear the music, it's easy enough to do. Maybe someday it'll be turned around, and when it's realized, you know, what actually is happening, it's not right. It's just not right. I'm coming up sounding like I'm really bitter or something, that I feel bad for new bands who put out music and can't, you know, all you can do is play live to make a living, and that's exhausting. It's great, it's fun, but it's exhausting, it's difficult. And you know, how many bands do people go see in a month?
Right.
Not that many.
Well, I'm still happy that you're all doing it regardless of the challenges, because
so are we.
Your music has meant so much to me. It's meant so much to a lot of people, and you know, and not only to celebrate these classic albums that you've been doing lately, but also the new music. I mean, Strange Little Birds is one of my favorite records in your entire catalog. You know, to be pumping out.
That's really great to hear. I appreciate you saying that. It's one of my favorite ones too. I think you know, and we're going to start work on a new one in April. So
yeah, I heard about this because speaking with Shirley too, she says you guys are going to go all the way back to living together and trying to do that again.
Yeah. Well, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but I guess that's what we're doing. Yeah. That makes me laugh.
I feel like maybe there should be cameras involved, you know?
God forbid.
This is real world Palm Springs garbage edition.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do our own reality show. Why not?
I told the same thing to her too. That recording out in the desert. I feel like the desert is one of those environments that can really alter a sound. It's an environment that really pushes people into something. I'm really curious to see if that happens with you guys.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I want to spend as much time out in the desert as I possibly can. Just rent a car and just go out and sit there and marvel at that landscape. And I think it's usually a subconscious kind of thing. But I think your environment, what you see during any particular day, affects what comes out of you musically as a musician the next day. I think it all works somehow, and it'll be interesting to experience that.
Congratulations, by the way, on all the accolades you got for American Epic too, and everything that you were part of with that.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was a labor of love and a long one, and I'm really delighted with how it turned out. And yes, we're getting. It's kind of been a slow. It didn't really get the proper release boot that it needed or deserved, but it's having kind of a slow rise. People are becoming aware of it more and more, I think. So it's very gratifying. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I hope to see one of the shows. I'm really looking forward to it. Making the trip if I need to, which I probably will. But I'll do it, and maybe we
I
can
appreciate
do this.
that.
Yeah, we'll do this again when the next record comes out.
You bet. It's a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
So we'll keep going here. We'll just keep going. 2016, Shirley and I got to talk about the Garbage LP Strange Little Birds, escaping the 90s timestamp and dealing with the harshness of what was happening in the world. This is part 4, Kyle Meredith with Shirley Manson.
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I love the new Garbage record. Strange Little Birds is it's a complete triumph for you guys, which is so exciting to see for any band who's been around this long. I know it's not the easiest thing to continue to put out amazing music, and it looks like it's exactly what you guys have done again.
You're making me feel really good this early in the morning. I think it's a good record. I think we all know it's a good record, actually, and I guess you're right. That's really rare, at any point in your career, but to know it 21 years in does seem like a real gift, at the risk of sounding really daft.
Not at all. You should be proud of what you've done. It was the last album, as the story goes now, that brought you guys back together after a little bit of a hiatus. And it seems like this is the album that really makes it real, though. Like, I see a lot of those bands who are sort of reunites for whatever reason, and they do the one-off record, and then, they disappear again. But to follow it up, does it feel like now this is really real again, that it's still garbage? Or maybe it always felt like that for you, that it never went away?
Yeah, to be honest, we never even split up. I've really no idea entirely where that sort of description has come from, because we never said we were, splitting up, or that there was any real problems between us per se. But we definitely took hiatus, and just life took hold, and we ended up really being away for much longer than we ever intended to. So yeah, we always felt like we were together, and we've always felt real. It's funny because the accusation of us not being real has followed us throughout our entire career, to the point where I think we're beginning to like it.
Well, I hope I'm not, accusing you of anything right there. It is a complete perception.
Sure, I stand correct, because that's a fair way of putting it. I guess it's a lazy description I'm using there, but yeah, we've been perceived as probably the best idea.
Well, no, it's easy, for any band, again, once you have a hit, to be trapped in an era, and you guys were in danger of that, as any band would be. And again, even if it was just a hiatus or a break, coming back and doing the last record and it being good, and then putting out Strange Little Birds and it being great, it seems like that's the ticket to escaping, I'm a band from the 90s, for whatever stamp that, gets put on you.
Sure. You're absolutely right. We are described always now as a 90s band. And in some ways, it does feel somewhat reductive, But at the same time, we're lucky in that it's such a great era to be associated with, that I think we just try and not to take heed of it too much. We don't take it to heart too much. People will forever label things, and we've been labeled, and that's life, and we just have to get on with it. But we feel that we've still got something to say as a band, and so we just try and not really pay much attention to what other people have to say with regards to the kind of band that we are.
Of course, it is interesting that you've had more albums out of the 90s than you did in the 90s, so for what that's
fair. That's very fair. You're setting me straight this morning, I have to say.
Happy to help in any way, Shirley.
Yeah, well, it is helpful. I mean, you're absolutely right. That's totally fair. But God knows, I don't know if I'll be able to live long enough to do another. Well, I suppose, no, in the 90s we did 2 records in the 90s, so we've already done 2 in the 2000s. So, no, we've done 4 in the 2000s.
That's right.
What we're talking about here.
Yeah. So keep it up.
Yeah, I'll do my best. Probably, as long as I don't get hit by a bus.
Don't do that. Well, so this record, and I do want to concentrate on Strange Little Birds because it's pulled off this really amazing trick. I would call this, and I think you've said it as much too, is it's an album that's sort of a reflection of our time. And I sort of guess that means worldly issues. But it also sounds like an album that's fighting as much for relationship as it is humanity, and often with those lines blurring. It's kind of an impressive example of the parallels of the two magnified and wide out at the same time. And I don't know if that was your intention, but it's pulled off masterfully, if so.
Well, A, thank you. B, I think there's always a duality in us when we write, I think that's always been something we've tried to do, is make sure that things can be universal whilst also really personal. I think that's when writing's at its best, when you're able to pull that off. And I think we did manage to touch on something on this record that really hangs together, and particularly after we sequenced the record. I think we realised, because of the way we had selected the songs and then sequenced them, it sort of tells a really vague story in a way, and yet manages to be universal and deeply personal.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to listen to a song like If I Lost You and Even Though Our Love Is Doomed and not think that you are writing specifically for someone or for at least a moment in your life. And I don't know if that's true or not, but complete, honest songs is how they come across.
Well, certainly If I Lost You is probably the most personal I've ever gotten on record, for sure, because it's really, it feels uncomfortable for me to sing that song, so I know that that's me being about as truthful as it gets, and I really wanted to try and do that with this record, is go to the places that I was deliberately avoiding for one reason or another, to challenge myself as a writer. I definitely want to grow and, get better at what I do. I want to push myself every record, and so I always sort of set myself little goals, and that was definitely one of them.
With the other side of the record, I mean, I wouldn't call it a political record because there's nothing overtly political on it, but at the same time, I mean, you from, again, perception, it seems like you're taking the darkness of everything that's happening in the world right now and saying, hey, look at this. I mean, did you go into it wanting to write something that did hit on, I'm going to use the word again, political side of things?
Certainly we didn't do that deliberately, and never have been interested per se in being a political band with a large P, but I think at this point in our lives, we're becoming increasingly anxious that our culture seems hell-bent on ignoring the truth, really, whatever that truth may be, but I guess is different for every individual. But certainly for us in Garbage, we feel that world leaders are just ignoring what we see as the truth, which is that we're in real jeopardy, I think, and the leaders are too interested in being popular, too interested in remaining in power, and as a result, not really doing their job. Because sometimes, unfortunately, and any mother or father will tell you the same thing, sometimes when you have to lead your family, as it were, it's not always the popular choice that you have to insist that your brood follow. Sometimes you have to make really unpopular choices and insist that people do things that they don't necessarily want to do all the time. You know, as human beings, we always want to do the easiest thing and the thing that feels the best, and that's not always the most favourable way forward, I don't think. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about anything to know what the solutions to anything are, but I think we as a band feel somewhat alarmed about the way we're all headed, and we just wanted to put that on the record in as sort of simple a fashion as we could.
I mean, I think the most powerful line on this entire record is, "I'm really getting desperate for revolution."
To me, it's to every be careful what it is you break. Every fragile thing, you know, can't be fixed. To me, that is the most powerful line on the record. In a way, I think we are becoming very careless as a race, you know, and I don't know. I feel panicked a lot of the time because everything seems so out of control, you know, and everything's become so disrespectful and intolerant and unkind and ungenerous, and it breaks my heart because I feel like we're all better than that, you know, but we seem to be really tending towards our worst selves rather than our best selves most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and excuse me if I'm taking another line out of context, but, you know, when I had to empty and here you say, "I get tired of trying," like, I relate to that in the context that we're talking about right now, you know, because I too am passionate about a lot of the things you're saying here, and it just gets so overwhelming sometimes. It's like, you know, maybe if I just live in my own bubble and take care of myself and the people around me, you know, the act or think globally, act locally sort of mantra, you know, because
absolutely. I think everybody's beginning to feel like that, you know, where they feel powerless. I think so many of us feel so powerless because everything seems so much bigger than us, and we do tend to remain in our bubbles and create our own reality via our telephones, you know, and justify any stance that we may hold by finding it on the internet. And I don't know, I think it can get very bewildering and disorientating, and who knows? I think that's why we all gravitate towards happy music all the time. We don't really want to look into the shadows anymore. It seems too scary.
But you're right. I mean, it's why we turn to music. It's why we find the relations within those lyrics, and you know, and maybe that's why I've fallen so hard for your album too. I mean, it sounds great. It's a great record, you know, on the surface, but you know, it's onion skinned, as they say. You know, I can keep peeling back those layers and find something new in this, which is...
Oh, I love that. That's a lovely description, yeah. I mean, that's what we certainly hope to do, and we do think we made a sort of beautiful record, which is sort of the records that we love to listen to, that do work on a lot of different levels, depending on how you're feeling. And the one thing I think we really managed to do on this record, which I think we've probably never managed to do before, is capture the sound of a human, you know, heart beating. Like, you can really feel that it's a human record made by humans rather than the machines. You know, when we hear a lot of pop music nowadays, you can really hear the machine, you know, behind most of the artists, unless they're exceptionally brilliant, you know. But on our record, you definitely feel that there's a pulse, and that's really hard to achieve on a record at the best of times, you know.
Is it easy for you guys now, or do you still, I mean, just from knowing people for so long, I feel like you would know each other's tricks and how to get to the end result, or do you find yourself that you still really have to work at finding the magic that you're talking about?
It's funny, it's a bit of both, because I do feel that it's always hard to find magic. That's always what you're mining for, all of us together. Every day we go into the studio and we hope to find that magic, and somehow or other on this record we did it. And we didn't know we had until we sequenced the record, and then we all realized, wow, this is something special for us. But so it's always a challenge, but it's also, it does become, the pursuit becomes easier because you do trust each other more. And you know each other's toolbox, which in itself is great. Like nowadays, we really know who to toss the opportunity to when we're in the studio. It's like there's just moments when you know, okay, we need to go to Duke or Steve for this, or Boots or Shirley. Each member has something that they have that the others don't have, and so we work very well together as a team, and we rely on each other, and we share a real sensibility, which does make things easier after a while.
Well, it shows. I mean, like I said, the whole thing, I know I've given you a dozen compliments on this, but one more can't hurt.
It never hurts, right?
Strange Little Birds, one of your strongest records, and I'm just so happy that you guys are still out there and still having fun with this and still creating. I can't imagine that you could not otherwise create, because it seems, so part of everything, I guess. But thank you so much, Shirley. It was really great talking to you today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Have a good rest of your day.
Don't get hit by a bus.
So thank you. I'll try not to. Bye.
A 2016 interview there with Shirley Manson. Now, I also interviewed Butch Vig just last year. I'm actually not going to include that one on here because we talked about a lot of other things that weren't garbage. We did talk about a little bit of garbage, though, so I do encourage you to seek that out wherever you get podcasts from. Just search for Kyle Meredith with Butch Vig. And definitely check out the brand new garbage. Again, it's called No Gods, No Masters. Thanks to Shirley Manson, thanks to Duke Erickson, thanks to Butch Vig. And even though we've never talked, I'll go ahead and just thank Steve Marker as well. Why not? Thank the whole band of Garbage, one of my all-time favorite bands. Thanks to you for checking out this episode. Please do hit the subscribe button before you get out so you can keep up with great interviews like this one, 3 times a week, new ones every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. iTunes and Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Acast, Podchaser, and YouTube for the video versions. After that, head over to WFPK.org, where I do a show Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's an hour full of song premieres, music news, anniversary spins, bonus interviews, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern at WFPK.org. Consequence has your music and film news. You can also find me on the social media spots, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all 3 of them at Kyle Meredith, TikTok at Kyle Meredith81. Like and follow along. Make sure to say hi when you do. That does it for another edition of Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Thank you for you doing me.
It's easy to hear your favorite artist on WFPK from wherever you are. Listen on your smart speaker, live stream from our website at WFPK.org from Louisville Public Media.